6. Some binary compounds are ionic, others are covalent. The type of bond favored partially depends on the position of the elements in the periodic table. Label each of these claims as true or false, and if it's false, identify the nature of the error. Basically, tell me what about this statement is incorrect. So start with A. Covalently bonded binary molecular compounds are typically composed of nonmetals. Well, the nonmetals are things to the far right side of the periodic table, and we're talking about covalent bonds. We're talking about molecules, right? It's, interchangeable, referring to the same thing. And yes, you do have to have nonmetals to have a covalent bond. So this is true. Easy enough. I don't have to do anything aside from just state that it's true. B. Binary ionic compounds are composed of metals and nonmetals, typically from opposite sides of the periodic table. So, I'm talking about ionic compounds, and then the two types of elements that we're postulating here are metals and nonmetals. And yes, metals and nonmetals are typically from opposite sides of the periodic table, with the exception of the very few p block metals. But again, this says typically, right? So most of the time, yeah. So that would make this true. Okay. Now, if you initially thought that this was false, there are actually some reasons why that would be an okay response. I'm not saying it'd be correct, but at least that would show me that you're thinking about things in a good critical way. For example, if you thought that this was false because they're not always on opposite sides of the periodic table, that's a true statement, because aluminum is actually on the right side of the periodic table. It's in the P block, even though it's a metal. The other thing I want to point out here is that the question actually says typically. Okay, typically. So it actually does leave room for some exceptions. If you wanted to focus more on the fact that ionic compounds or formed between two things that have opposite charges, again, that's a correct statement. But realize that metals will form positive charges and nonmetals will form negative charges. And so we're already communicating that information by saying metals and nonmetals. Okay, so this is a true statement.